Thanks for joining me. On a recent visit to Adelaide, I popped into the South Australian Aviation Museum, which is located about 20 minutes from the airport and CBD. I trust you'll enjoy this video as we take a closer look at the various aircraft and items on display. The 1919 Vickers Vimy flight was the first successful air journey from England to Australia, piloted by brothers Ross and Keith Smith, with mechanics Wally Shears and James Bennett. The modified Vickers Vimy bomber departed Hounslow, England on 12 November 1919. After 28 days and multiple stopovers, they landed in Darwin on 10th December, winning the £10,000 prize offered by the Australian government. Their flight demonstrated the feasibility of long-distance air travel, paving the way for future aviation advancements. The aircraft is now preserved at Adelaide Airport, commemorating their groundbreaking achievement in aviation history. Here are some of the aircraft on display in Hangar One. Shortly, we will be taking a closer look at them, including climbing on board several. I love how all the planes have been placed with care and precision, with smaller aircraft squeezed in under the larger ones. This museum was founded in 1984, 41 years ago, and is located in Port Adelaide. It showcases Australia's rich aviation history, some of which have been forgotten. It features restored aircraft, engines, and aviation artifacts. Interactive exhibits highlight military and civilian aviation achievements, making it a must-visit for enthusiasts and history buffs. Aside from Kingsford Smith, there were many Australian aviation pioneers I was not familiar with, such as Hubert Wilkins, who served during World War I and was also a polar explorer, Harry Butler, who trained over 2,700 pilots during World War I, and Roy Gropler, who at 19 flew solo from Australia to England. This Spitfire was part of a shipment to Australia in 1943 and joined the RAAF's 79 Squadron on Goodenough Island and Kiriwina Island, Papua New Guinea. The squadron code was UPO. The squadron flew cover for Allied bombers as far away as Rabaul, 610 kilometers or 380 miles each way with drop tanks. This example suffered a landing accident on 28 August 1943 on Kiriwina Island and was transported back to Goodenough Island. Mr. Langdon Badger found the aircraft in 1971 and shipped it to Adelaide in 1973. Restoration took 4 years. The Fokker F27 Friendship was a turboprop airliner developed by the Dutch aircraft company Fokker in the 1950s to replace aging piston-engine airliners like the Douglas DC-3. Known for reliability, fuel efficiency, and short-field performance, it was popular with regional airlines worldwide. First flying on 24 November 1955, the F-27 entered service in 1958, with production lasting until 1987 and over 580 units built. VHCAT, a Fokker F27-109, first flew in Amsterdam in September 1959. It served with the Department of Civil Aviation until 31st March 1978. In July 1978, it was transferred to the CSIRO Division of Cloud Physics in Tamworth and named Cyrano, used for atmospheric research, particularly cloud and weather studies. The Fokker Friendship has a special place in my heart, as when I was growing up in Malaysia in the 1970s and 80s, we flew in them many times to visit family and friends. The sound of the Dart turboprop engine was unmistakable. I always felt excited flying in one. I was saddened when Fokker went into bankruptcy in 1996. In November 1993, Australian Flight Test Services, Mawson Lakes, took over the aircraft and relocated it to Parafield Airport. VHCAT continued in research and flight testing until 2001. After a change in ownership, it fell into disuse and was disposed of by Parafield Airport to the museum in February 2008. The aircraft was moved to the museum on 13 December 2008. Two Rolls-Royce Dart engines, propellers, and cockpit instruments were obtained to complete restoration. In 2013, CSIRO donated equipment and external probes to help restore the aircraft to its flight testing days. Fitted with probes for atmospheric experiments, many have been refitted to showcase its operational appearance. The cabin had racks of sensing and recording equipment, allowing scientists to work in flight. This restoration highlights its historical significance in scientific research. The Douglas C-47 Dakota is one of the most iconic military transport aircraft of the 20th century. Developed from the Douglas DC-3 airliner, the C-47 saw extensive use by Allied forces in World War II, playing a crucial role in logistics, paratroop drops, and medical evacuations. Powered by two 1200 horsepower engines, it had a top speed of 224 miles per hour, 360 kilometers per hour. Known for durability and versatility, the Dakota remained in military service for decades. Over 10,000 were built, with many still serving in military and civilian roles worldwide. This aircraft, A65114, was delivered to the Royal Australian Air Force RAAF in June 1945, initially repatriating prisoners of war from Singapore. It later played a key role in the Korean War, providing essential transport and logistic support. The aircraft also carried VIPs, including Prime Ministers Ben Chifley and Sir Robert Menzies, Governor-General Sir William Slim, Explorer Sir Douglas Mawson, and General Red Robbie Robertson. In 1954, A65114 was transferred to No. 38 Transport Squadron at RAAF Base Richmond, serving for 10 years before reassignment to the Aircraft Research and Development Unit ARDU at Leverton. In December 1976, it moved to Edinburgh, South Australia, following ARDU's relocation. On 17 October 1986, the aircraft suffered an engine failure on takeoff. The crew landed safely, but the left undercarriage collapsed, causing significant damage. Transferred to the museum in January 1992, volunteers restored it, and it is now displayed in its final ARDU color scheme. It had logged 13,897 flight hours. This Czechoslovakian Aero 145 VHZCL was imported to Australia in 1962 and assembled at Bankstown. John and Rosemary Dowdy's Commodore Aviation used it for tuna spotting from Port Lincoln. With a 1,700-kilometer range, the aircraft covered areas from Kangaroo Island to the Great Australian Bight. Its capabilities contributed to increased tuna catches during the industry's boom years. The Pilatus PC-9, a Swiss turboprop trainer, was selected by the RAAF in 1985 to replace the Aermacchi MB-326H, with 67 built by Hawker de Havilland. This aircraft, A23032, began as a trainer before joining the Roulettes in the 1990s. It later became a forward air controller aircraft, with 77 Squadron and 4 Squadron retiring in 2019. It is now on display at the museum, repainted as A23045. The Fraser-Nash FN5 nose turret was used on Wellington and Lancaster bombers with two 303 Browning machine guns. It was very cramped. I don't think I could have fitted in this small space. Operated by the nose gunner, it provided forward-facing firepower against enemy aircraft. The turret had a plexiglass dome offering visibility but limited protection, making gunners vulnerable. WK-165, built by Avro in February 1955 and delivered to the RAAF before being transferred to the RAAF. It was used for radar calibration, aerial photography of atomic bomb tests and trials at Woomera and Maralinga. Between 1963 to 1969, it joined No. 4 Joint Services Trials Unit. 1,352 Canberra bombers were built. In Australia, the Government Aircraft Factory, GAF, built 48. Serving in Vietnam, the last RAAF Canberra was retired in 1982. The General Dynamics F-111, an iconic Royal Australian Air Force aircraft, played a vital role in defence operations for 4 decades. A swing-wing fighter bomber, it had a top speed of Mach 2.5 and a range of nearly 3,600 miles, 5,900 kilometers. A8132, the 8th F-111 allocated to the RAAF, first flew on 21st October 1968 and was delivered to RAAF Amberley on 25th July 1973. Initially with one squadron, it moved to the Aircraft Research and Development Unit, ARDU, in 1979. It contributed to weapons testing, including the Harpoon anti-ship missile, and was painted in a distinctive camouflage scheme for trials. This paint scheme was later reapplied for museum display. In 1998, A8132 returned to one squadron before reverting to trials and testing. It participated in exercises and air shows until retirement in 2010. Restored to ARDU colors, it was displayed in 2011 after being exchanged with A8134 from the Australian War Memorial. A8132 remains a historically significant RAAF F-111. A fascinating but often forgotten part of Australia's recent history was the pioneering work carried out in Woomera that was related to rocketry. Established in 1947, Woomera played a vital role in space and defence research, hosting British, American and Australian missile programs. Woomera also supported military aircraft trials, including the RAAF's FA-18 Hornet program. This aircraft, A2132, ordered in November 1981 and delivered on 16 August 1988, was one of 2 Hornets fitted with flight test instrumentation, the other being A21101. A2132 debuted at the 1988 Leverton Air Show and served with 3 squadrons before joining the ARDU at Edinburgh, South Australia. The McDonnell Douglas, now Boeing, FA-18 Hornet is a twin-engine supersonic multi-role fighter with a top speed of Mach 1.8, 1,915 km per hour, and a combat range of approximately 740 km. Designed for both air-to-air and air-to-ground combat, it features a 20mm M61 Vulcan cannon and can carry a variety of missiles and bombs. Since 1978, over 2,000 Hornets have been built, serving in multiple air forces worldwide. The RAAF purchased 57 single-seat FA-18A and 18 two-seat FA-18B Hornets in 1981 to replace its Dassault Mirage 3 fighters. These aircraft entered service between 1984 and 1990, becoming the backbone of Australia's air combat capability. Some Hornets, including those tested at Woomera, were fitted with flight instrumentation to monitor structural fatigue, particularly in high-G maneuvers. After nearly 40 years of service, The RAAF retired its Hornets in December 2021. 8 were designated heritage aircraft, with 1 allocated to each state. The FA-18 remains iconic and was replaced by the F-35A. Talking about the F-35A, this full-scale model was used for ECM compatibility and interference studies. Now we're off to Hangar Two. On the way there, I came across this Avro Anson under restoration. Avro Ansons were used during World War II as advanced twin-engine trainers for pilots, navigators, gunners, radio operators and bombardiers. Over 11,000 were built. This aircraft is made up of parts from EH-954 and AW-965. HMAS Melbourne R21 was a Majestic-class light aircraft carrier commissioned into the Royal Australian Navy (RAN) in 1955. She had a top speed of about 24 knots. She was involved in 2 fatal collisions with HMAS Voyager 1964 and USS Frank E. Evans 1969. She provided support during the Malaysian Emergency and Vietnam War, serving until 1982. The de Havilland DH-112C Venom was a British carrier-based jet fighter of the 1950s. Derived from the Vampire, it had folding wings and a tailhook. Armed with cannons, rockets and missiles, it served into the 1970s. This aircraft, WZ-931, arrived in Sydney in May 1956. It joined 724 Squadron HMAS Albatross at Nowra. It arrived at this museum in October 1987. The Australian Ikara anti-submarine missile, armed with a Mark 42 or 44 torpedo, had a 19-kilometer range. The Sea Wolf was a surface-to-air missile with a range of 10 kilometers and a speed of Mach 3. The Westland Wessex was in RAN service from 1963 to the early 1980s, primarily used for anti-submarine warfare, ASW, and utility tasks. This example, Pennant number 834, served on board HMAS Melbourne and Stalwart. The RAN acquired 27 Wessex helicopters. Equipped with dipping sonar, torpedoes and depth charges, the Wessex played a crucial role in protecting naval task forces from submarine threats. Beyond ASW duties, it excelled in search and rescue, transport, and disaster relief operations. Rugged and reliable, the Wessex proved essential during its service life before being replaced by the Sea King in the late 1970s. The Wessex remains well regarded, known for its versatility and contribution to fleet operations. The Lockheed P-3 Orion was developed as a replacement for the Lockheed Neptune maritime reconnaissance aircraft, used by a number of nations, including Australia. The initial service variant, the P-3A, entered service in 1962, and an improved version, the P-3B, followed in 1965. The P-3C was a completely revised version with the entire electronics suite replaced by a new computer control system, the installation of cartridge-fired tubes for the sonar buoys under the rear fuselage, an infrared system rather than searchlight for night surveillance, and hard points under the outer wing for harpoon missiles. Further updates, known as Update 1 and Update 2, followed. The Orion replaced the Neptune in Australian service, with 10 P-3Bs being ordered in 1964, these being delivered progressively from January 1968. 11th Squadron moved from Townsville to Edinburgh on receipt of their Orions. The remaining Neptunes, operated by 10th Squadron, were replaced by P-3C Orions. The first of these was delivered in May 1978, at which time 10th Squadron also moved to Edinburgh. In 1980, it was decided to order 10 more P-3Cs to replace the older P-3Bs rather than attempting to upgrade them. The P-3Bs were traded in on the new P-3Cs, with some subsequently sold to Portugal and one to New Zealand. The P-3 Orion first joined the RAAF in 1968. This aircraft, A9756, was delivered to 10th Squadron in September 1978 as a P-3C and was the sixth aircraft for the RAAF of this variant. It undertook operational and training roles with 92 wing in its 39 years of service. A9756 was upgraded to AP3C standard during the early 2000s. It was retired as part of the progressive withdrawal from service of the Orions. The de Havilland Canada DHC-4 Caribou was a versatile twin-engine transport aircraft that played a vital role in Australia's military and civilian aviation. First introduced in the 1950s, the Caribou was renowned for its short takeoff and landing (STOL) capabilities. The RAAF acquired its first Caribou in 1964, eventually operating 29. These aircraft were vital during the Vietnam War, transporting troops, supplies, and conducting medical evacuations in challenging conditions. The Caribou's ability to land on unprepared airstrips proved invaluable for delivering aid to isolated communities and supporting military missions in Southeast Asia, Papua New Guinea, and the Pacific. This Caribou, A4225, was accepted by the RAAF in June 1965. It was assigned to 38th Squadron at RAAF Richmond and served in New Guinea from 1965 to 1971, qualifying crews for deployment to Vietnam. During this time, A4225 discovered the wreck of an RAAF Dakota, missing since 1945. A4225 also participated in Cyclone Althea relief operations in 1971. It continued service with 38th Squadron at Richmond and Amberley until its retirement in 2009. This Aermacchi MB-326H, serial number A7026, was manufactured by the Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation. It first flew on 8th August 1968 and was delivered to the RAAF on 19th August of the same year. Assigned to the Central Flying School at RAAF East Sale, Victoria, it played a key role in training pilots. From 1970, it was flown by the Roulette's aerobatic team. Tragically, the aircraft crashed on 19th August 1985 after having flown almost 6,800 hours and completed 15,458 landings. Following the crash, it was used as a training aid at RAAF Wagga Wagga. It was acquired by this museum in 2004, reassembled in 2006, and is now proudly on display. The prototype Vampire first flew from Hatfield, UK on 29 September 1943 and entered RAAF service in June 1946. In the same year, Australia approved purchasing 50 Vampires for the RAAF. The first three were British-built, including an F2, A78-2, powered by a Rolls-Royce Nene engine. In 1948, 80 Mark 31 Vampires, built by de Havilland Australia, joined the RAAF. The Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation built Nene-powered F-30 fighters and FB-31 fighter bombers. This aircraft, A79-202, delivered in 1951, was withdrawn from service in 1960 and preserved in museums, including the Mildura Warbirds Museum and later this museum in 1989. The Bell OH-58 Kiowa was introduced as a light observation helicopter for the US Army in 1968, with 2,200 units produced. In 1971, the Australian Army leased 8 Kiowas for Vietnam and later ordered 56, with most built by CAC in Melbourne. The Kiowa served in reconnaissance and training roles until its replacement by the Tiger ARH in 2007, retiring in 2019. This example, A17010, one of the first 12, was retired in 2005. Prior to leaving Adelaide, we visited the Vickers Vimy Memorial at the airport. The 1919 Vickers Vimy flight was a groundbreaking journey, marking the first successful air crossing from England to Australia. Piloted by Australian aviators Sir Ross Smith and his brother Sir Keith Smith, along with mechanics Wally Shears and James Bennett, the flight covered 11,000 miles in 28 days, demonstrating the potential of long-distance aviation. This Vickers Vimy bomber, which played a crucial role in this achievement, is proudly displayed at Adelaide Airport, Australia, one of only 2 left in the world.